Hi, this is a tropical update for September 6th, just after midnight. Well, we are continuing to track Hurricane Irma right now, a well-defined Category 5 hurricane, just about to make landfall around Barbuda and Antigua on the islands. Uh, Pretty much maintaining its Category 5 status all day on the 5th, and really nothing has impeded its structure. You can see a very well defined hurricane with almost symmetric perfectness, great outflow, and these colder cloud tops over the last 6 hours or so have really wrapped around the center nicely. As you can see, just the concentric ring of these really bright reds that are around the center of the hurricane. And it's showing absolutely no signs that it's going to weaken anytime soon. The environment that it's in is absolutely perfect for it to maintain its strength. What we have been trying to wait for all day was the hurricane has been making its westerly jog, and we've been waiting for the west-northwest jog to occur, something like that. But it hasn't really happened all day. Up until the last about 4 hours or so, you can see just by the start of this run, I'm going to put a marker right there, up to where the end of this loop occurs, right there. It's now officially starting to make its west-northwesterly jog. Unfortunately, these islands right in this area are pretty much going to get the direct landfall or hit from this hurricane. Thoughts and prayers are with those people, because this is going to be one heck of a night for those islands. We can go on to the GOES imagery of this hurricane to even show it even better. You can see the structure of the hurricane with the much darker black cold cloud tops around the center, just starting to make its way into the island. You can see the eye wall is just about to make landfall on Barbuda and then the Antigua Islands, and down the chain of the Virgin Islands way over here. These guys will be getting it sometime during the morning hours of September 6th. You can also see by the radar images up here, the eye pretty much has maintained its structure through the last couple hours now, just about to make landfall right over the islands over here, and then these northern islands are well within the play later on this evening and into the morning hours and afternoon hours on the 6th. Recon data, the latest pass on the aircraft hunters that are in there have been showing a steady 917 millibar pressure, as well as on these few passes you can see the west-northwesterly jog over towards the Barbuda Island, and pretty much no sign or dip of the strengthening of this hurricane, although it's kind of flatlined. You can see by the 918 millibar run, and including on the last pass, you can see the winds are ever so slightly down just a little bit at flight level when they recorded this. So this may be just a slight weakening in the hurricane, possibly the onset of an eye wall replacement cycle later on in the overnight hours and into the morning hours. We'll just have to see about that. Now, the golden nugget question is, where the heck is this hurricane going to be going? We've been talking about that for the last few days or so, and even since this thing has been was a wave off Africa, everybody was saying, where is this thing going to go? Is this going to be a U.S. landfall thing? Well, it's looking like more and more that the United States is going to be in play, especially after today. The models have kind of agreed now on a more U.S. landfall. There was some outside chances that this thing would make the west-northwest jog, and with a short-range trough or a trough currently in the East Coast would pick this thing up and kick it out to sea, and it wouldn't do any harm to the United States. Well, within 3 days right now, the models have been pretty much in agreement now. So the current National Hurricane Center forecast takes it over the northern islands today and into the overnight hours and afternoon hours on Wednesday, just north of Puerto Rico. Although we've seen with these hurricanes, they do really funny things, and you can get wobbles where it goes west-northwest, and then it takes a jog west, and then west-northwest again, and then jogs back west. So really have to pay attention to this thing, but no matter where you are in this 3-day cone right here, you're going to feel some serious impacts. Already have hurricane warnings, and watches have now already extended into Cuba, and don't be surprised, I should say, to see Florida now having hurricane watches possibly up by tomorrow afternoon. The Keys will likely have mandatory evacuations, including the southern tip of Florida, possibly beginning as early as tomorrow afternoon. As you can see by the National Hurricane Center, the forecast within the first 3 days, very solid agreement in the models. Pretty much that's going to be a direct hit for the Bahamas, and again these northern islands. But beyond that is where things get a little weird in the forecast. The current National Hurricane Center right now wants to take this thing just off the tip of Cuba and just into western Florida, but again, this is where the center is going to go. You're going to have impacts well outside the center of the storm, and this is about a 500-mile storm. So the hurricane winds, you can see just by on this, you can also see how tightly packed they are, but the tropical storm force winds extend pretty far out from the center of the storm, just over 100 miles. Now, going to the models and the ensembles, I should say, on the most recent run, you can see that there is quite a split past 3 days. So the 3-day marker is right around here, in this section right here. You can see just basically how widespread these models are. You don't really see the models now taking this thing out to sea. It's really kind of been out of play now today. But now you're starting to see the spread in the models, because there's so many different variations from a short range trough coming in, or if the high pressure in the western area of the United States and the high pressure over in the Atlantic Ocean, basically there's going to be a weakness somewhere in between these high pressures from a short range coming in. When does that occur, and when does this turn to the north occur? We really don't know yet, and that's been the golden nugget question for the last few days now. But on the current 0Z model ensembles, pretty wide divergence. I mean, you can see the tracks. Some of these want to take it into South Carolina and North Carolina areas. Some of these actually having it making a turn right around Cuba and going right into like just north of Savannah, or others have it going into Florida, and then some even have it going into the Gulf of Mexico. The European right now is this one right in here. Actually, let me just get rid of that. The European model, you can see right around here. So this thing wants to take it into the Key West area and then right up into all of Florida. Again, some of these actually do have it spitting out still into the Gulf of Mexico, and then that becomes a whole nother issue, is how far west does it go, or does it graze the entire west coast of Florida? We really don't know that, but the models have pretty much been in agreement today that the idea of it going out to sea is pretty much thrown out the door at this point. And now, going into what the models have said to verify that on the European model, this is the verification for 12Z on Saturday, so around 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning. Time frame, the European wants to have the hurricane right over Cuba, which on the eastern side of Cuba, there's a lot more mountains over there. I think there's about 2 or 3 really tall mountains that could easily disrupt the center, but the further west of Cuba you go, the terrain gets more flat, so there's less mounds. There is, again, the land for it to weaken a little bit, but it won't be as dramatic as if you would have something right into the eastern Cuba mountains, I should say, and go all along Cuba and then make the turn. Again, if it did something like that, then yes, it would weaken the hurricane, but it really is not going to weaken this thing too dramatically, because again, it will reemerge off the Gulf and will expand as these systems do whenever they interact with land. They get bigger. Again, they won't maintain their strength, but then once they hit over the water, because the water in the Gulf of Mexico over here is well within the upper 80s, then you might have at least a Cat 2 Cat 3 hurricane trying to make landfall beyond that. The European model, based off what it wants to do, wants to take this thing into the western coast of Florida as possibly a Cat 1, Cat 2. But again, you can see how the pattern in here has this really, really strong ridge in the west, and the trough that was in the east coast right now gets cut off and moves out to sea. So that weakness in the eastern high gets eroded from this trough, and the system begins to turn north. And again, that could be a pretty bad scenario for any part of Florida, especially on that west coast if you're in the Tampa Bay area or the Key West sections. The GFS actually has something a little bit different. I'll show you that quickly. The GFS at Saturday afternoon wants to keep this thing more offshore, not really as aggressive into Cuba as the European model. And if we time that out through 24 hours later on Sunday, again, wants to make a glancing blow on Florida, kind of like what Hurricane Matthew did last year. But again, we've seen what Hurricane Matthew did last year. When you have a grazing hurricane coming up the coast like this, it really doesn't take much to get hurricane force winds coming along the coast of Florida over here and doing some really crazy damage. And also, another big problem for this hurricane is the winds piling water over on the eastern side of Florida, which, again, with really strong waves can create coastal flooding, and we saw how that happened over last year and also in past hurricanes. And then the GFS wants to instead take this thing into South Carolina as you project it into Monday afternoon. So you can see there is a very strong variation in what the models want to do. We still don't really know where it's going to go, even though we have a much tighter window on where it should be going. But anywhere from the North Carolina coast all the way down into Florida, the Keys especially, and anywhere actually into the panhandle of Florida, you are well within the risk of this hurricane. And also, if you're wondering what this little thing is back here, that's actually Tropical Storm Jose, or by this point will be forecast to be Hurricane Jose, but it should remain far offshore and have no impact on the United States. Again, the biggest player in this is going to be Hurricane Irma, and where does it go, and where, what model, and where the models tend to pinpoint this thing, I should say, past the day 4, day 5 time frame. Again, there's a lot of variations that could happen. This is still, according to the GFS, this is Monday afternoon, and to the European, this is, again, Monday afternoon. So 144 hours out, we're well within the 6-day time frame. So there's definitely a lot more to watch from this. Once it gets past the Dominican Republic and Haiti, we're going to have to keep a very close eye on that. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you for listening.